distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen.
Brother Murray, we'd like to welcome everyone to the BK History Club. We meet here. First and foremost, I want to thank the Zoom audience for coming on, and I want to thank the live people that came on to the group. Thank you very much for participating in the BK Mackey's History Club. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of Bill Mackey, Amos Wilson, Louis Ray Rivera, rest in peace, Colette Colvin, Brother Gil Noble, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, the original member, Brother Hassan, Jamil Alameen, and the great attorney at war, Alton H. Maddox. Also, Minister Khaled. So we meet in honor of these people. Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Professor George Simmons, Runoko Rashidi, bona fide individuals who gave up fame and fortune because they wanted to bring truth. And in honor, UAM for life, Miss Leola Maddox, who drove a moderately old and new car from Teaneck, New Jersey. And she came, rain, sleet, snow, you name it. She ate her dinner in the UAM because she believed in bringing people together. And there's nothing like coming to a live audience. Let me tell you, one of the best things, even though we have social media and Zoom, and it's nothing like coming to the live meeting and meeting people and talking to the speaker. And you could say, you know, I sat next to these people. I sat next to Dr. Ben and Mackey and all of them. But it's nothing like coming out. So we always say support coming out live and meeting the people. And that's what we're trying to bring back, because history is something else. So we're going to bring the camera over to the Amos collection. This is to help Brother Sababu, who's, I tell you, Babu is burning the midnight oil, and he's trying to get another book together to continue the work of Amos. The first classic is Blueprint for Black Power. That's a big read for Amos, and he was going to have it in 2 parts, but he came out with the blockbuster. The second book, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat Toward the Reclamation of the African Mind. In 5,000 years, we're still trying to get, these people are still trying to get our minds right. Because I believe our minds is broken, damaged. Black on black violence, the psychodynamics of black self-annihilation in service of white domination. And we are still controlled and dominated by white folks. The black on black violence, the funding of the people against each other, all over the world, the CIA and all these institutions that come out of America, Britain, England. African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order. And we do not want to let African-centered consciousness leave us. And that's one of the things why live lectures and lectures is still important. And anybody tell you it's not, they don't know what they're talking about. Issues of manhood in black and white, awakening the natural genius of black children, and they're coming after our children. And the falsification of African consciousness. And Louis Ray Rivera's classic, Jazz in Jail. Eurocentric history, psychiatry, and the politics of white supremacy. Those are massive topics. And I always want to say in honor of Louis Ray Rivera, and when Professor Mackey left us, and we had nobody to come that lived in the community when we left when they pushed us out of 851 St. Mark's Avenue, when Mackey left us. Louis Ray came to the mantle and he would come down here. And Hassar and Calvin and all the members and Louis Ray would speak. And he would talk hour and a half, 2 hours. Oh man. And he lived right up the block, Jefferson Avenue. And we would walk him home. We on Quincy. Jefferson is 3 blocks. He lived on Bethel, and his wife still lives there. Beautiful, 3 family. The house got to be worth about $3 million. And with them trying to do things in Brooklyn now, so we want to honor, and he would talk for another hour and a half, walking us home. So I want to never forget Louis Ray, come out of Marcy Project. Thank you, Louis. So we have some books, and I have a whole bunch of books here. We're going to go through them real quick in honor of the great Dr. Ben, black man in the Nile and his family. And not too many people follow Dr. Ben orders, but Dr. Ben laid some orders and only a few people was following. So Dr. Ben goes into how the land of the black, the pyramids, the writings, the different cataracts, that great dynasties. Dr. Ben, I tell you, he was something else. And it used to be, it just was a good time when you could go right up to Pam Pam's. And actually, do you know what it was like to go in Pam Pam's and sit next to a historian that you never, this is why I tell you live lectures. Sit next to a historian and eat next to him. It's ridiculous. Okay, in honor of Bill Mackey, down home. The return to the Georgia backwoods, William Henry Mackey Jr. And Mackey talks about Jacksonville and all the stuff he had to go through. So we're in the process of getting this book, trying to get it republished, and we're going to zoom in and see what's going on. But in honor of Bill Mackey, returning to the backwoods. Okay, I'm gonna, I found this book, City College and the Jewish Poor. And one thing about Mackey's always talked about books. And their community believed, it is commonly believed that Jews in America rose from rags to riches because of their passion for education, particularly in the relation of the City College of New York. A mystical has been created, a never-ending land had been imagined. Sherry Gruelich writes, in which docile Jews living in safe slums gratefully, respectfully, obediently lapped up the gifts of Anglo-Saxon culture to the admiration of the love of their children in the never-ending land, democratic and free institutions, openly, gladly, and bountifully to receive the hopes and passion of their eager entrance. But this is not what happened. I'm not going to keep reading it. This book right here is an excellent Rutgers University Press, as our speaker always say, and it talks about the Jewish poor. I want to thank the African Echoes family and Brother Truss Graham, the speaker, Howard Troman, Jesus and the Disinherited. Excellent book. So if you ever want more information on books, the African Echo Study Group, Blockbuster Friday, Study Group, and Saturday. Truss Graham, our keynote speaker, comes out. If you think they don't play games, so you run around talking about Donald Trump and all these places, listen, all these people, they got a powerful enemy in Washington. Go quietly or else. They control all movements. If they want you to leave, you better leave. If you don't leave, they will bring up something on you and you will leave. Spiro Agnew, go quietly or else. His own story of the events leading to his resignation. So when you think somebody's running stuff, you don't know what you're talking. They got some folks up there. And I remember when Anthony Browder took us to the Egypt on the Potomac in Washington, D.C., and he showed us the Masonic hookup at the 15th Street Meridian Park. And we was in the park, and there was a whole bunch of Europeans in there. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X Park on 15th Street. And we go in there and we see all these folks, and I'm going, where all these people being in here? And old brother Browder, very nice, politely, I didn't know what I was talking about, and he's a cool cat, and he said, let me tell you something. This park is called Malcolm X Park. And he said on one side of the park, you could get fellatios, they was doing all kind of stuff. On the other side of the park, you could get your drug of your choice, women of the night, gangs. Washington, D.C. was vicious, and it still is. And he said these folks came in, went to the precinct, demanded police protection, went and got some brooms and some garbage bags and cleaned up the park, and demanded that they have protection. And he said, Brother Ray, the name of the park is Malcolm X Park. Malcolm X Park. And look what was happening when we was in here. So we said, please, my friend. He put me down nice and easy. Because I'm from New York, and I saw it, I said, oh. But the same thing happened. If you ever want to see how Europeans live, dirt, the social history seen through the eyes and abuses of dirt, the creation of the umbrella, the unsanitary of Europe, the waste being thrown out of the windows. The umbrella comes from that. It wasn't meant to stop no rain. So get this little book if you can. Also, slavery by another name.
Peace.
This is the hangings. Without sanctuary, the hangings. What happened in the South? The brothers being hung, the whippings, where they throw you in a pot of hot sugar cane oil. The atrocities, what happened to us in the South on the plantations. The postcards, the whippings, the beatings, where they would take a horse, put it one side, take another horse, put it another side, and pull the horses would run and rip you, and the baby would fall out. They came up with something like that for the movie Sankofa. Have a seat, my friend.
Peace.
So this book, and whenever they have all these studies for reparations, they never mention this book. Have a seat, my friend. They never mention this book. They never read the book on what happened to us. Slavery by another name. The re-enslavement of black Africans from the Civil War to World War II. You have to get these books. In honor of Big Harold, who left us too soon. I miss Brother Harold.
Yes, sir.
Bad boy. The transfer agreement. So when you see all these signs, stop Palestine, all this crap. You never see a sign where get out of Africa. Get out. Stop the stealing. Get out of the land. But in honor of Big Hal, the transfer agreement. So when you want to really know the secret relationship with Palestine and all that, you get that. The untold story of the secret pact between the Third Reich and Jewish Palestine. Thank you for the African Echoes group. Queen Nazinga, warrior, and I keep saying these books back and forth, back and forth. And they wouldn't let her negotiate, the Portuguese, vicious people. And the brothers that was with her formed a seat, and she sat on the seat and negotiated with these fierce warriors. Just like Winnie Mandela. When she found out somebody was snitching, she took a tie and put them on the brother and burnt them up. So if a lot of sisters read this book, the brothers won't be able to pull the wool over you, because you'll be warrior. Warrior. And the cats come straight. Sort of like my wife always put me in check when I try some nonsense. You know what I mean? So this is what you got to remember. And that's on of the African Echo Study Group. One nation under a black man. And this young lady, Whitney Webb, white woman, very smart. She got 1 and 2. And she talks about black male under the nation, and she's not the only one. So everybody talking about the Epstein files, but listen, regular black folks can't even get to the club. Jekyll Island and all them places where the big, freaky, disgusting. And they got all them folks who's in there, black, white, all of them in there doing some of the most dastardly things. You can't even go to the club. You're not wanted. So I want to thank Whitney Webb with volume 1 and 2. We only able to go to Hunts Point. Broadway by the Depot in East New York. Dope Incorporated, from the Chinese opium drug wars, Lyndon LaRouche, how they got us strung out in the 60s to stop one of the most radical movements of power, and they still studying that. And they said, we got to stop these black folks. We got to stop these troublemakers in America. They did it to the Chinese and Chinese opium drug wars, dope dens. And they got a book called Down Low, Low Down. Got Asians smoking opium, look just like a crack pipe. And now they got medical marijuana. They got more medical marijuana spots than liquor stores. White people are smoking it, blacks are smoking it, they selling it, they walking all up and down Monroe Street with their dogs, smoking weed, and you can't do nothing. You could thank King George Soros. But this book, Dope Incorporated, is the historical context on how the British, where they know how to do with them drugs. And Chancellor Williams talks about how they dumped it in the black community. So this is an excellent book, and it's more to come. Cannot stop it. The Manufacturing of a President, the CIA insertion of Barack Hussein Obama. CIA all the way. In this excellent book, I'm about half, but I got a long way to go. Ain't nothing but a con man if you ask me. Ayo Kamati, Jews are the problem, in this blockbuster. Jews are the problem and the psychology of the Jew. This is a title from Ayo Kamati, Money Tree Publishing, excellent publication, War on the Horizon. He's in Burkina Faso as we speak. The genie is in Burkina Faso as we speak. Empire They Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. I want to thank Professor Mackey, How the Jews Invented Situations. Harry Cohen, William Fox, Carl Lambert, Louis Mayer, Jack and Harry Warner. And they set up, it's tell you how they set up theaters, how they took control of movie houses all through the United States, funded. And the movie projector was basically a toy. And they found out they could use it to control masses of people. And they destroyed black people's image from Birth of a Nation. It started with Birth of a Nation. And they was going down into the black exploitation movies. And we brought them out of the red. But they continue to use us, and we continue to pay for our demise. So anybody that gets in the entertainment industry, if you don't read The Empire They Own and see how they pass down power, you will never understand. And they made their money destructive, destroying our image. And they created a life that was fake. It wasn't real. They did not like Neil Gerber for telling the truth. The gangs in New York, the Bloods and the Crips ain't got nothing on the Dead Robins, the Bowery Boys was vicious. City Hall, the 5 Points, roving, 400 to 500 roving gangs. Before you get into gang activity in 2026, get this book. and read about the 5 points. And our lecture tonight is going to go into from blacks living around the City Hall area and the creation of City Hall, all the way up to Seneca Village, all the way up to Harlem. So anything you want to know about gangs, you look at these Irish gangs and these Italian gangs and these Jewish gangs coming to America. And they're doing the same thing, getting rid of their criminals and bringing them here. Richard Pryor, you want to see something about women of the night, houses where you go buy what you want, family, and what black families had to go through. Richard Pryor went through a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. And Professor Mackey would say, if you ever want to know about somebody, you get the book. In honor of Richard Pryor, a bad dude, and it's to grow up thinking your mother is this and your grandmother is that. Black families had to go through it. I found this, the last of the Ethiopian philosophers, the lost Jews. The story of a surviving ancient tribe of black Jews, recognized as such by the state of Israel, who now face extinction at the hands of Christians and Muslim countrymen. Now, all of a sudden, everybody else is a Jew. I tell you, boy, thank you, Professor Mackey and Truss, and just books. Donald Trump! You can say what you want to say about him, but he's one of the most arrogant. They call him stupid. And if we start being arrogant and stand up, maybe they stop treating us like we're doing, because they are just doing stuff to us that they're not doing to nobody else. So whenever you want to read about a person, you buy books. He has another book, The Art of the Deal. How can somebody come to America with a dream, as Dr. Lewis says? Donald Frederick, immigrant grandfather Frederick, came to America with a suitcase, a dirty pair of drawers, nothing. They had whatever they wore, that's what they had. And we saw a little bit of that in Hollywood's depiction of The Godfather, where the guy just stuffed everything for atrocities and came to America and created a criminal empire. And he brought real estate. But people helped him in the lodge. He joined the lodge. But when our lodges won't help us. Have a seat, my friend. I found this book. Jews and Negro slavery in the Old South. Jews and Negro slavery in the Old South. Bertram Wallace Cole. Jews and Negro slavery in the Old South, 1789 to 1865. Books are all over the place. And this is the thing is nice. The cover. Booker T. Washington. Tyreen Wright says he was a bad dude. People say things about him, but she has another opinion. So we have this book. Also, thanks to the African Echoes family, When We Ruled. It was a time where we ruled and ruled for thousands of years. So I want to thank African Echoes, so you could get these books and it'll tell you everything on that continent. African or American, Black Identity, Political Activism in New York, 1784 to 1786. Hell of a time. The Destruction of Black Civilization with Chancellor Williams. Chancellor tells us all the mistakes we made as a people. And to have an excellent study group from our speaker who goes into the mistakes we made. Everything was not right in that mass continent of civilizations that control the world and ruled. And there's a program on Gil Nova where Chancellor Williams talks about how they dumped the drugs in the community. How the person had to have a criminal record, working for the government. He had to know everybody. And they sent them in. They made the deal with the Italians and the French connection. And they dumped it in the community and said, this is a new thing. 50-cent caps, baby bottle nipples. And it destroyed not only my family, but families all over. Excellent program on Gil Nova, if you could find it. Then crack, now we got fentanyl. But America is so vicious, it's killing its own. Because white people is messing with it, and they don't even know what to do. Henry Ford, the international Jew, found this. The world's foremost problem, the international Jew. I call him King George Soros. Inside the secret network of George Soros, bad dude, controls the Democratic Party. The shadow party, how George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and 60s radicals took control. And the world's greatest investor, Warren Buffett, ain't got nothing on George Soros. Get these books on the interview, and I just found this. The Soros agenda. The main obstacle to a stable and just world order of the United States. Believe it if you're not. Republic Book Publishing. And I'm going to read real quick. Multi-billionaire George Soros' motto, if I spend enough, I can make it right. But what is right, according to Soros? In 1993, Soros heralded as the man who broke the Bank of England. He used his publicity, enormous wealth to create possibly the most politically powerful global network of foundations, open society, which are dedicated to imposing his Wharton humor on the world, ending capitalism, which are dedicated to imposing his reshaping, especially the only constitutional democratic republic, the United States of America. By 2023, well, we're in 2025, the national, political, and social landscape has changed beyond recognizing. Soros oiled the Democratic Party machine with billions of dollars to advance his agenda, turning the American dream into an American nightmare. How did he do that? Who helped him? And why wasn't it stopped? Depicting criticism, the self-trained agnostic who disputes Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Soros explores the religions he was born into, a shield thus tribalizing anti-Semitism. But this is just a little something. Neither safe nor effective. The COVID vaccine. Capitalism on a ventilator. Rand Paul, the great CEO cover-up. The cancer industry, crimes, conspiracy, and the death of my mother. This man wrote a book. Causes unknown, the epic of sudden death in 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. The healthy young people, the football players, basketball players, track stars, soccer players, and all these individuals, strong, dropping dead on the field, collapsing, being found unconscious in their house. Edward Down, who was an analyst for the notorious investment hedge fund company called BlackRock, who controls all our lives. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Larry Fink. How do these people in the prime of their life? Dead. Vaccine timeline. This thing goes into vaccines and how they was created, who created them, all the way to the 1900s. 1883. Dr. Lewis talks about the Flexner Report, the American medical killing machine, finding facts that could save our lives, the Wuhan cover-up, and in honor of Cynthia McKinney, who, in my personal opinion, the only one that cared about the people of Georgia. When Donald Trump made the statement and called places like Puerto Rico S-hole countries, Cynthia McKinney wrote a book, How the U.S. Creates S-hole Countries. And her next blockbuster, When China Sneezes, from the coronavirus lockdown to the global political. And she basically states, and I have the interview, where they finally have came up with something that are killing us. I done went to so many funerals and we can't even connect the dots. And I want to thank Naomi Wolf, the Pfizer papers. Pfizer wanted to withhold this information for 75 years. And they went through the Freedom of Information Act, and it tells you what happens to the blood. It tells you the mRNA. It tells you the spike protein. It tells you what happens to your kidneys after years. And they're saying, you can think, Robert Kennedy, say what you want to say about it. 10 years after you take that, things can start happening. And it's documented. I'm going to say some community programs. We have Thorough Black Talk, Tad, Keisha, Brother Black. And they come on every Thursday at 8 o'clock. Sister Brooke and the Freedmen's Bureau. They talk about the reparations and the fight for reparations. That's a hot program that comes on tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Blog Talk Radio out of Philly. Sister Empress Chi, Brother Lumumba, El Pollinator. That's YouTube Live. They live stream it and it's on Zoom. They had Brother Fred Hampton's son. And he was talking about the attempt on his life, but that comes on at 10:30, and you could call in. Ayo Kamati, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio with Brother Anthony Mohammed. Every Monday, they give you a blockbuster, Dr. Haru, from 9 to 10, health results, and then you got Ayo Kamati. Jews are the program 1 and 2. He's in Burkina Faso right now and giving up an update. So we want to thank Brother Anthony Mohammed and Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. Also, our blockbuster out of Baltimore, Darren Muhammad, State of the City. He comes on Wednesday, Thursday, but the Saturday program, 12 o'clock out of Baltimore, State of the City. We want to give Brother Darren a great big hand on his program. Bad dude and his brother, they just got it going. Also, every Tuesday at 7 o'clock,
Ray, you muted.
Dr. Aline and his, Dr. Aline comes on with your immunity project. That comes on 7 o'clock, and that's a Zoom, and you can call in with your questions. The Friday African Echoes with Brother Truss. They have a study group out of Newark, and Brother Truss is the moderator, our keynote speaker tonight. And they're going through the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat toward the reclamation of the African mind. Not only do they give you that Friday blockbuster from 8 to 10, they come back Saturday. The Know Thyself study group out of Asbury Park with Brother True and the same crew. And you get a blockbuster Saturday. Trust Graham is also the mediator of that. Also, we have the Semotap organization and Dr. McIntosh. And the Minefield program, WBAI 99.5, 10 o'clock, and they're going after whatever try to disrespect they do. They had a big victory with Netflix, but Hollywood is still disrespecting us, putting us in dresses, destroying our image. So they're going after them again. So we have that, the UNIA, Raymond Dugal and Michael Duncan, Race First. And I remember Amos said the first book, when I met Amos said the first book I want you to read, my friend, is The Opinions and Philosophies of Marcus Garvey. And basically states, everybody in every community where they live at should go to every precinct meeting and know who the captain, who runs the precinct, what officers work out of that precinct, who's his commander, and you go there every month. So it's a lot of things happening to us. And a lot of people don't even know who controls the precinct that patrols their area. That was the first thing I learned from reading The Opinions and Philosophies of Marcus Garvey. Thank you, Brother Hayes. And also The Rock, 13205 Merrick Boulevard. The UNIA has a store, it's a mini Jetro's, and it's right next to the Home Depot on Burnap Street. And they got excellent, and you don't have to worry about somebody disrespecting you in another store. When you go there, you don't have those problems because it's your store. It's the UNIA. So what they're doing is trying their best to reclaim our mind. My mind included. We all have to be reprogrammed. So ladies and gentlemen, a good friend to the Mackey's group, and I want to bring him on because I have to keep bringing him no matter what. His stuff has to be put out. I want you to give a great big hand to African Echo's founder and a good friend of the Mackey's group, my friend and a friend to everybody coming here. Give him a great big hand. The new Harlem, the first Harlem in Seneca Village for the trust. Well, and we're going to let him rip to maybe about 20 minutes after 9, because we got to get him to that train station so he can get back to Newark. So trust, it's on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray Ray. And thank you, the William Mackey History Club for being here.
And thanks to my lovely wife for handling the camera.
What I want to do, one quick second. This book that I'll be drawing from this evening. Before I get started, Ray, you need this? Okay, first of all, I want to, in traditional African culture, ask someone elder in the room for the opportunity to speak. Do I have the opportunity to speak? Thank you, Professor. We always make sure that we give reverence, respect, and honor to the ancestors and also to the elders in the room, because they laid the foundation for us to be here. Again, I want to thank the William Mackey History Club, Brother Ray Ray, all the individuals that are involved in the process of making this event happen every Wednesday. A lot of people don't know it takes a lot to put this on, and literally, single-handedly, Ray Ray takes it upon himself to do this on a consistent basis, and I want everybody first to give Ray Ray a hand. Because it's not easy to put on public forums, and it's not easy, to get people to come out and to support programs that are in their best interest. Issues that confront us on a regular basis that determine our livelihood and our standard of living. We don't come out for that, so much less come out for things that would be as important to their livelihood and their existence. So that's why this particular forum is so important. I also want to acknowledge those individuals, some brothers that came this evening. Brother Malachi, a good brother. from our own background, the 5% Nation, and most of all, individuals that play a very active role in our community. A community activist and a journalist, writes some very fantastic articles for the Amsterdam News, as well as one of my cohorts, 125th Street, brother that, becomes one and only that single-handedly, took it upon himself to spearhead the renaming of the street after the school of the father's name, which I was, a participant and part supportive of, and it was Malachi that actually led that struggle. So we want to give him a hand for doing that for the nation of the 5%. Before we get started, as you do know, the last time I was here, we did some material dealing with the myth of the Willie Lynch letter. The myth of the Willie Lynch letter. We gave you some reference material. Also, we dealt with some basic fundamentals. The brother Manu Ampim wrote a book, The Myth of the Willie Lynch letter. I know a lot of y'all are familiar with Willie Lynch, but Willie Lynch didn't exist. The letter didn't exist. And one of the key factors of history is accurate research and study. The problem what we have in our communities are we get saturated with a lot of information that we don't know how to process. So therefore we take it, we assume it's legitimate, and we run with it. And a lot of times it's false, and a lot of that is because we don't have the skills or the processes, the methodology of research and study. We don't know what it takes in order to do legwork. Let me explain something to you. A lie there's a cliche. A lie has very short legs. And the reason that is because to tell the truth is time consuming. In order to get it right, you have to do research. It's literally complex in its process. So the truth itself is not something you come by, hook or by crook. It's a real process. Versus a lie, you can get a dime a dozen at the corner store, And one thing is for sure is, if you don't know nothing, you'll believe it real fast. Real fast. This is 2026, you got people still believing we didn't go to the moon, or the planet is flat. Real asinine shit. Stuff that you can really go and check. You don't have to be a genius to figure certain things out. But we don't take it upon ourselves to master the technique and skills of research and study. That is more important than the information itself. Information itself is insignificant if you don't know how to process it.
Yeah. Wow.
What good is knowledge if you don't know how to apply it? That's why I always say knowledge is not powerful. Applying it is. When you take knowledge and apply it, it becomes powerful, it becomes kinetic. But if it's just knowledge itself, it's the potential of something. That's all it is. It's like this book, if nobody reads it, it's just ink and paper. That's it. So this evening, what we're going to deal with is some issues that last time I was here, we were discussing some issues pertaining to one, identity, but most of all, about early settlements in America, much less in New York. And at that time, we were talking about people like Hubert Harrison and the early Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance period, and the misconception about the Harlem Renaissance, as if though the Harlem Renaissance was the only Renaissance, as if though it only took place in Harlem. And those of us that do research history know that's just not true, and the issue is being able to understand the details of what these things are and how they unfolded, So when we think of Harlem, we think of the black mecca of the world, as we would look at it as today. But really, it's not true again, because if you know history prior to Harlem, which is between 1900 and about 1940, you'll find out that there were African enclaves that existed prior to Harlem. So a lot of us are familiar with some, and the reason that was because of a major event that happened recently in regard to the construction of a federal building in Lower Manhattan. And because of that, I was really blessed by one of the elders, Professor Leonard Jeffries, good friend, went to his house, and the individuals that overseen that project, that bioarchaeological part of the project, of the African burial ground, as well as the sociological and the cultural aspect of the burial ground. We have the research papers from those. These are 3, they come in 4 volumes. You know, this is all of the material that was actually retrieved in regard to the archaeological and anthropological studies that were done on the African burial ground. So we're looking at material that is scientifically tested and proven and went through their particular process of analysis. And the individual that led that particular study was Michael I. Blakely, originally from Howard University, now from St. Mary Mount College. And he was one of the individuals. It's 3 volumes. One's dealing with the skeletal remains of the burial grounds, which, again, these burial grounds are the cemeteries from what we today call Seneca Village. So when we think about Seneca Village, a lot of times we think about a particular place that actually was an early settlement, but most of all, that's all it was. But Seneca was way more than that. You know, it was, like I said, it would be comparable. It was smaller in context, but it would be comparable to Harlem of the Renaissance based on what it provided and what leadership it led in regard to the struggle for black people during that particular time. And one of the earliest settlements, we talk about 1825 here. 1825. Think about that, 1825. That means that the Civil War wouldn't even be done for 40 years. And you got to remember is that at that particular time, one of the key factors of development was property. So one of the key factors of Seneca Village was the ownership of land and property. Did you know that black people could vote? That black people could vote in 1825? Did you know that? Black people could vote. The only problem is that the only way you could vote, whether you was black or white, you had to own land. Right. That was the prerequisite. And as you know, women couldn't own land.
That's right.
So we know what that meant. And then the issue here was that the majority of white wealthy class, they made it exclusively to themselves. And anything that was left over, that's what we got. So a lot of the leftover land we got. Not just there, but in the conquest of what we would call colonial and imperialism around the world, settler-colonialism, that literally set the standard for grand theft around the world, because that's what took place. From 1455, 1454, Pope Nicholas V literally gave the whole west coast of Africa to Portugal. The whole west coast. So we're going to deal with a little bit of that tonight, and one of the reasons that I wanted to address that particular issue, especially in Seneca Village, was because of this particular book. I'll be reading from my own copy but this book is by Leslie Alexander. As I told you before, Leslie Alexander is the sister of Michelle Alexander. Now, those of you that are familiar with Michelle Alexander, she wrote a book called, anybody know the name of it?
Medical apartheid.
Say that again?
Medical apartheid.
No.
No, that's Harriet Washington.
Harry Washington.
That's,
The New to Jim Crow.
yeah.
Right, okay.
The New Jim Crow. And it's about what we would call a modern day form of slavery. But it's called the penal institution. You know, jail. And what that really meant in regard to modern day slavery. And it's actually not modern, because when the 14th Amendment was actually written, if you read it, it'll tell you that slavery was eradicated except for what? For punishment. Go ahead, that's correct. Malachi, no, except for punishment. So that means anytime you in jail, you a slave. That's what the 14th Amendment says. But this book is very important. The name of it is called African or American Black Identity and Political Activism in New York City, 1784 to 1861. 1784 to 1861. That's very important because that particular time period, 1784, where was black people? What was we doing?
Under the gun. Under the gun.
Slavery.
And, well, it depends. No, that's not. See, again, when you dealing with information, the first thing you deal with is time and geography. That's the first thing. And time and geography are going to dictate what your response is. When somebody asks you a question, you don't answer. You try to understand what the question is fully before you even think about an answer. And what happens is most of us don't think about the question long enough to understand the value of what answer they want to give. So they give the immediate one and then find out when really going beyond the surface, you find out there's something that is a little bit more, how can I say, more intense, more meaningful, more valuable than the immediately, current response to the question. So, again, these are the things that we are talking about. Before I start, and I'm going to be reading from this particular text, but I want to give you a little background on some of the settlements that actually existed prior to modern day, listen to me, prior to the turn of the century and what we today call Harlem. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody in here from New York? Okay, everybody in here from New York. So I would assume that everybody in here knows Harlem. But do anybody know how Harlem got to be Harlem? Where did Harlem come from? How do we get that name? All of this means something in regard to the very nature of the settlement of this particular landmass. Who actually controlled the area before white people got here? Say that again? The Lenape, you're right, that's correct. That's a native indigenous group that controlled these areas. They were called the Lenape, the Lenape, you'll find a variety of ways of pronunciation, but that's the particular Native American group that was here prior to Europeans coming to this particular area and the induction of Africans. Now, this is irrespective to a lot of individuals because there's a lot of new material going around these days, coming from a variety of different sources, organizations and groups that are making it more how can I say, challenging in regard to dealing with the issue of who is the real settlers of this particular geographical land area. And like I said, it's me. I don't play games. I go and do the research. And the issue is that if you have enough evidence to support your claim based on real research, or you just spitting in the wind. So if you tell me that there's information to substantiate that Africans were on this particular landmass, then give me the evidence. Show me the evidence. And let me explain something to you. I also study molecular biology as well as physical anthropology. But the very nature of the study is based on how far back we are talking about, and then what are we talking about in regard to, you know, how we are making these judgments. You don't make a judgment on a sequence code. That means this is that all people have what are called sequence codes. They're based on genetic makeup of your mother and your father combined. Those are 46 chromosomes, 23 from both together. Nature shakes them up, and that sequence code that comes out is you. Now, every person on earth has a different sequence code. But what they have in science and genetics are called clusters of sequence codes. That means that they are groups of sequence codes that combine together in a certain area at a certain time. Those are called haplogroups. Now, all it means is that there were a group of individuals that had similar sequence codes that lived in this area. But one thing it don't tell you how they looked. It don't tell you how tall they was. It don't tell you how short they was. It don't tell you what texture hair they had. None of that. It just tell you that you and that person got a sequence code that are similar, and that y'all have a common ancestor somewhere up the line. That's all it meant. That's all it says. It's the same thing like when you get a pie chart done for your ancestry. Y'all, again, the way they make it and the way they produce it is so asinine. And the reason that is because they're not talking about the information properly. The object is that when a person says that you have, say, 30% Nigerian, they're not saying you're Nigerian. That's not what the science says. They are saying that the pie chart says that you have this much combination of a sequence code with this group of people, which is not actually what it's saying. What it's saying is that when it say that you have a common ancestor in a pie chart based on genetics, it's saying that your genetics, and these people's genetics have a 30% common ancestry somewhere back in their history. Not that you come from there. That's not what it's saying. They're saying that you have a common ancestry. Now the issue is, they're saying that it's from Nigeria. But they're only making that claim because that's where they at right now. Anybody in here that knows history knows that people migrate. That means they could start here and end up way the hell over there. That's what science and history does. The problem is that in order for you to know that, you have to have enough data in order to literally record all of the events that have transpired to make sure that you covered every base. You see what I'm saying? So to say that you're Nigerian, or you're Senegalese, or you're Ghanaian, or you're Congolese, I mean, yeah, you have some similarities. Nobody would negate that. No scientist would negate that. But to say that you're from them, that's a little bit pushing it. You know, and in addition, the other thing is, you can't do it with a common, everyday, analysis. That means that you pay your little $125 and you go here and they do the little analysis and they give you a pie chart. Second is that any geneticist will tell you there's no percentage in genetics. There's no such a thing. There's no like you got, 13% of this. They don't measure it you can't measure it like that. But they make you think that this is what's taking place. So that's why when it comes to finding your roots and all of this, You know what it is? It's entertainment. They want you to watch the damn TV program. You understand? Virtues really understand the significance. Is this material, is the concept legitimate? Sure. But what and how they come to conclusions, sometimes it's not really what you want to do. So, but again, that's just to give you an idea. The areas that we're going to be talking about are areas that start in the lower part of Manhattan, and when the sister talked about the Lenape, they were the individuals that gave you the name Manhattan. Actually, it was called Manhattan. That was the name of this particular area, and they owned it. It was, well, they controlled it, put it like that. Because as you do know, natives, indigenous people didn't look at land in regard to ownership. The reason that is because they looked at land as a part of nature. And when the European came to them and asked them about owning land, they looked at these guys like they were crazy, like, what are you talking about? So he said, we want to buy some land. He said, buy land? He said, can you own a cloud? Can you own the sun? Can you catch the rain? Can you stop the wind? If you can't do none of that, what are you talking about owning something? But they didn't understand the Europeans' perception of possession. And this is why native, indigenous population, as well as Africans, got blindsided by Europeans. Because we begin to deal with people we never dealt with before. And they took advantage. They were serious. Because they lived in an area where they were resource poor, land poor, and people poor. They wasn't making babies, they didn't have a lot of resources, and they were all fighting each other to get it. Now, Ray was just talking to y'all about gangs. Well, the gangs didn't start, not in there or in where he was talking about. Gangs started in Europe. The worst wars that ever happened were the gangs of the War of Roses. You ever heard of it? Yeah. The War of Roses. There was 100 years where these jokers fought and killed one another because of a white rose or a red rose. I saw you coming down the street. He got the red, cut that freaking head off. For hundreds of years, they fought these wars, families, the Yorkshires against the Lancasters. Until Henry VII decided that I'm tired of this. We're going to do something else. And what they decided to do, they decided that he was going to marry one of the daughters of the Lancasters, what he did, which solidified the family. They took the red rose, and put it inside of the white rose. And they renamed the family, not the Lancasters or the Yorks, they called them the family the Tudors. Now you can go right now, they got a movie on, I think it's Netflix it is, maybe? I think it's The House of the Tudors, go check it out. They was ruthless. You know, what's his name? Pope Alexander VI, that's the boys with the B. I can't remember. They were these were families that were very influential during the period of the Catholic rule. Because Catholicism ruled Europe. They controlled everything. Anything that went on in Europe, the Pope controlled. They controlled the very foundation of how you govern. They wasn't the governor of your state, but they determined what would be the outcome. That's how influenced they was. And when the Tudors eventually came to be, Henry VII died. And what had happened was his brother, Henry VIII, decided that he was going to become king. But at the time, he was all over the place. He was hitting women everywhere you can shake a stick at. But he was already married to this woman, Catherine of Aragon. And what he did was he wanted to marry this girl, Anne Boleyn. And she was a prostitute. She was a hoe. I mean, a real ho-ho. Like a ho-ho-ho. You know what I mean? No bullshit. I'm serious. Her sister was a hoe, and the father was the pimp. The father was pimping them out in France first, and then they came to England because they wanted to pimp her out to the new king, which was Henry VIII. When Henry VIII got whipped by that girl, he wanted to get rid of his wife. Now remember, anybody know what was the name of Spain before Spain became Spain? It was called Iberia. And before Iberia, anybody know what it was called? Before Iberia, it was actually separated in 3 sections: Aragon, Castile, and Granada. The thing is that they were all separated, controlled by particular areas. And Catherine of Aragon, her uncle was the King of Spain. And him and the Pope was like that. And when he found out that Henry VIII wanted to divorce his niece for a hoe, the Pope was like, oh, that shit ain't gonna go down like that. He was like, no, that shit ain't gonna go down like that. So what he did was he said no. Henry VIII was so pissed, he was so pissed that he couldn't get this done, that he decided that he was gonna fight the Pope. And he didn't know how he was gonna do it, but what had happened was there was already a fight going on in the church. And that fight was between the new brand of converts and the old brand. And the new brand was with this guy named Martin Luther. Y'all remember him? Martin Luther was the guy that was the foundation of creating the Protestants, which means protest. Protestants protest. And they were protesting the Catholics, because these jokers came out and they decided that they was putting foot on people's neck in order to get money out their ass and to prop the church up. See, y'all don't really know the history of the church or the papacy or what really went on. I'm not talking about that shit y'all see in the movies or, you know, I'm talking about real church history. And when you see what's going on, you find out that these individuals played a particular role in creating and setting the stage for all of what I'm getting ready to read about. And that is that the conquest of the world. The whole, not Europe, but the whole world, you know. And the other thing too is that we have to begin to understand, to see history in its own context. That means history during the time in which it happened. You can't put your ideas in Roman times. That's not how it works. You know, it's like saying that there was racism in Rome. No. And the reason that why there wasn't racism in Rome, because racism didn't come into being yet. Racism as we know it. See, when we think of racism, we think of color. But racism back then was not an issue of color. As a matter of fact, color was an issue for nobody. The issue was ethnicity. What language did you speak? Where's your geography? Where did you come from? That determines who you are. Not that what religion are you? That determines who you are. So you got a guy like, you know, Septimius Severus. He was the emperor of Rome. This is a black man from Numidia, North Africa. This the guy that literally ruled Europe. That means he ruled England at the same time he was running all of Spain. He was a bad man. You know, St. Augustine. St. Augustine was from Tagaste, Numidia. They called him the common father of Christendom. When they call Christianity philosophy, he's the father of it. A black guy. Or Athanasius. Athanasius was the individual who created the New Testament. The chronological order and shit that you see, them 27 books, he the one that created that shit. You had Origen, you had Clement, you had Arius. These are all black guys, not black guys just... When I use the term black, I'm not talking about a person that's of color. I'm talking about that come from somewhere. So when I say black, I really mean African. That means that you can go and find out that this man literally was from Africa. Anybody ever heard of Simon of Cyrene? Simon of Cyrene. Simon is the guy that carried the cross for Jesus. Seneca, he's from a place, Cyrene is a place called Seneca. Seneca today is in Algeria, in Africa. That's where he's from. The problem is we don't look at geography. We just look at the line and the name and we assume that he's white. Because we never checked. So when we get the material, we assume and we take positions because we really never read. Or we really don't. It's like saying that the first Hebrews was black. I hear that a lot. Like he was there. You know, that's a real... I mean, it's stupid shit because most of us that do research in regard to comparative religion, much less anthropology, physical or cultural, or archaeology, there are certain yardsticks, you know, certain guidelines that you need to, you know, make sure that everything is cut and dry before you start making claims about things. And what we do is we make the claims without really doing the research. Or what we do is, which comes easy, we just parakeet what was already said. Whatever the guy said for me before, what they say is cool. You know, like I said, knowledge is power. That's a fact. No, it's not a fact. And the problem is because we never went and checked it out. We just assumed that because everybody said that it was knowledge was power, we went with it. And then everybody started saying it. So right now, if you go to any room, go to any audience and say, is knowledge power? Everybody in that room going to say yes. And the problem is that it just shows that there are people that are real thinkers, and then there are people who are taught to, who never learned how to think. They know information. Do not mistake knowing something for understanding it. That's two different things. Do not think that knowing something is understanding it. No, 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 no. But that's what we think, because sometimes we use certain terms interchangeably. And those interchangeably causes problems in the later on down the road. But let me go on. Now, in early New York, one of the areas that we find out is that when Africans came, Africans never came to America from Africa. Let me say this again. Africans never came to America from Africa. Where did we come from?
America.
No. Where did we come from?
Bering Strait.
Say that again?
Bering Strait.
The Bering Straits. No, I'm not talking about the people who settled here. I'm talking about us black people that are here. We call up people of the diaspora. Most of us have an idea on how we got here. And they tell us that we got here by a particular method.
By what?
A particular method. Right. So what I'm saying is that if you go ask anybody out in the street, how did we get here? They would say we were brought here. Anybody ever heard of that?
Yeah,
Slavery?
that's what
Right.
they say.
Okay.
A lot was.
Right. Now, say that again?
A lot was born here.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. I didn't say born here. I said brought here.
Oh.
Now, the issue is that when we talking about those individuals that were brought here, I'm saying is that there were very few, if any, Africans that were brought from Africa to this landmass. It didn't happen. If you read the log dates, about 10%. That means 10% of all Africans that left Africa and ended up in the United States of America. 90% of all Africans that left Africa went to Brazil. They left Brazil and went to the Caribbean, and from the Caribbean they came here. This is why I don't understand about the foundational American shit. Because to me, the issue is that how can you separate Africans? That's what was done to us from when we got here. If you are Antiguan, a Jamaican, if you are Puerto Rican, a Cuban, if you are indigenous American, or if you are African American, or all of us came from somewhere the hell else. I'm talking about here. Came from somewhere the hell else. And then you became recognized after a period of time as part of whatever this is. So in the earliest periods when individuals were coming to this place, they started in lower Manhattan because the northern part really wasn't as well developed. But as you do know, I said to you, Pope Nicholas V was the individual who did that in 1455 when he gave Portugal the whole west coast of Africa. It wasn't the issue of them controlling just the west coast of Africa, but they controlled all of the labor force. That means all Africans from a certain period of time that came out of Africa, you had to go to a Portuguese to get them. You couldn't just go to Africa and get no Africans. That's not how it worked. And see, the Pope and them, like I said, they controlled everything. You had Pope Nicholas V in 1455, and then in 1493, you have Pope Alexander VI, where here was a cracker who split the whole world in half. Pope Alexander VI, he split the whole world in half. He gave Portugal one half of the world, and he gave Spain the other half. Check that out. Anything west of, and he used the Atlantic Ocean as a demarcation line. He said anything west of the demarcation line was Spanish. Anything east was Portuguese. Think about that. Now, mind you, he ain't on none of it. Half the shit he ain't never seen. He ain't never seen the New World. He never went over the ship. But we read about this stuff in our history and we assume that it's truly legitimate history. Like they talk about one of the greatest, seafaring individuals was a guy called Henry the Navigator. You heard about him, Doc? You heard of Henry the Navigator, Portuguese boy. They call him the father of slavery, the Portuguese boy. Henry the Navigator. But the funniest thing, when you find out his history, he ain't never been on a ship in his life, never. Never was on a ship. But yet he gets the name Henry the Navigator. It's like Benny Goodman, the king of swing. Elvis Presley. Y'all know where I'm going with this.
What are you talking about LD for?
This is where we are dealing with. So this is why I'm saying is that these are the things that happen. So in those early days, there were certain settlements south of 110th Street that actually became the corner zones before what we today call modern Harlem. And when we think of modern Harlem, we're thinking of a period when after the Great Migration and what we would call post-Reconstruction, not post just Civil War, but post-Reconstruction, when Africans were moving north, Africans was moving west, African was moving further south, and Africans were moving east. See, when we think of the migration, most of what we taught is we just move from south to north. Why did we, anybody know why did we move from south to north? Why? Say that again? Jobs, you know, remember we was in slavery. Anybody?
More freedom from slavery.
I like that, more freedom. But did you know there's a thing called plantation slavery, and then there's a thing called urban slavery? Did you know that the largest, what do you call it? Port for slave trading was Rhode Island. Rhode Island. Rhode Island. But check this out. If you ever get a chance, you want to look up a guy by the name of Aaron Lopez. Aaron Lopez. He was a Rhode Island Jewish. He was a Spanish Jew. But in the North, we had slavery too. Wait a minute, you don't think that the people in the North, nobody had slaves and then everybody in the South had slaves? No, come on, y'all can't believe that one. That's the okie doke. In the North, they had what is called urban slavery. That means the difference of the setup was different. That means you didn't have one plantation that might have had, say, 15 slaves. In the North, you had individuals where that the slave numbers were limited based on whatever the job labor was. So in this case, if you was in the North, the majority of the amount of slaves that the individuals would have would be 3, 4 at the most. And the bigger the operation, the more they would have. But you don't think that just because you went to the North, that meant you was free. Don't you know you had free people in the South? You had black free individuals in the South. So what was the difference between a black free individual in the South and a free individual in the North?
More freedom in the North.
Well, not more freedom. Let's look at it like this. A different freedom. Not more, not better, different. And it had a lot to do with how you was caught up with the system itself to determine the benefit of what your labor would provide. Every place that you went would be different. So urban slavery was just as... Did y'all know that New York and New Jersey were the last 2 states in the Union to get rid of slavery? New York and New Jersey! Not South Carolina, not Tennessee, not Mississippi, New York! If you ever get a chance, you're going to go want to write, this will tell you about it too, but you're going to want to read about what Wall Street really was about, what the wall was really about, what it meant to commerce and trade. One of the greatest pirates that ever existed used to work on Wall Street. One of the greatest pirates that ever existed used to work on Wall Street. And when he seen pirates making so much money, he said, I ain't doing that shit no more. I'm going with them. You know what his name was? Captain Kidd. Captain Kidd used to work on Wall Street. Because the Wall was one of the first major trading places for slavery. So all of this is the precursor to that. It sets the stage. It gives us an idea on what was the ingredients that was necessary to create the enclave that we see today. They were talking about immigrants from Ireland, and believe me, it was a lot different than what they make it seem in regard to these particular settlements. But you'll determine that based on the communities they create. You know, Chinatown, you know, Little Italy. Y'all know Little Italy, right? Y'all familiar with Little Italy? Y'all ever been to Little Italy?
Yeah.
Little Italy is right across the street from where? Not right across the street from Chinatown. Right. Anybody know how Little Italy got its name? Well, that area originally was controlled by black people. It was called Little Africa. Let me say that again. It was called Little Africa. Greenwich Village, they call it the South Village, went all the way from there, damn near, all the way to Chinatown. Black people controlled it all. Little Africa. You had the Tenderloin area. As a matter of fact, let me read you a little something about the Tenderloin. That was a really good place. This I'm going to be reading to you from the New Negro Before Harlem. This is some material pulled from the Black Manhattan by James Weldon Johnson, for all of y'all that don't know. One of our great, pioneer of music, song, and history and culture. But let me just give you an idea. In the 1870s, this displaced population of African American migrants began to occupy the Tenderloin area of Manhattan. According to a digital project published online by the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, the Tenderloin was what is known today as Midtown. That's where black people, and mostly this was on the west side of town, not on the east side, on the west side. So where you would have, with a museum, Central Park West, all down that area where the Central Park is, all of that. That's the area where you find a lot of black people going up that area. But let me go on. It says this area extended roughly from 20th Street to 53rd Street, between 5th Avenue and 7th Avenue. Although Harlem is historically known for having famous jazz clubs, the first jazz band to appear in New York appeared in black-owned hotel called the Marshall. Now the Marshall was this bad. Before Harlem, the Marshall was the juke joint for everybody. Every jazz musician, every drug dealer, everybody that was, all of the gangsters, one of the baddest gangsters of the day, Casper Holstein. Y'all know Casper? Casper Holstein, bad man. But let me go on. It says that although Harlem is historically known for having famous jazz clubs, the first jazz band to appear in New York appeared in a black-owned black hotel called the Marshall, which was located in the Tenderloin. This was stated in James Weldon Johnson's Black Manhattan. The Marshall on 53rd and 53rd Street was frequented by black and white musicians and celebrities, as well as writers and artists. It was a place where people of different races could meet and socialize on equal terms. The Marshall was part of the heart of the Tenderloin. It was a hub for artistic and intellectual mingling in new ideas. Now mind you, this is before there was a Harlem Renaissance. And they're talking about this whole issue of it being a hub for artistic, intellectual, and the very nature of the intermingling of all aspects of life. This is before Harlem. But we don't realize this was setting the stage. It says, from this place came music and other expressions of African American culture. Even the idea that became the NAACP was negotiated at tables in the Marshall. The Marshall was truly an expression of the new Negro, as it created a space where blacks and whites could have intellectual conversations with one another. This allowed the black world to peek into the white society, which is what Locke, we talking about Alain Locke, claimed to be essential for the black individual to strategically understand their positionality in this racist world. Additionally, it offered a space for novelty thinking, which involved new ways to uplift the race, as well as a way to spread both visual and performing arts within the community. Again, before Harlem. Go ahead, my brother.
Based on what you're saying, this is like Facebook of that time.
That's correct, without a doubt. You're talking truth. It says, but this angered white New York. Complaints by a white committee were made about the, quote, mixing of the races and interracial dating. In 1913, a letter from the mayor was sent to the police commissioner, and spies were sent to the marshal to try and find the owner, James L. Marshall, in some illegal act. The Tenderloin, along with San Juan Hill, y'all familiar with San Juan Hill?
Now, what's that?
Oh, come on, man. Y'all gotta know San Juan Hill.
11th Avenue, 47, 48, 49,
No, San Juan Hill a little further up.
50-something street.
Correct. Right. What we would call San Juan Hill is what we would call,
Cotton Club?
no, what's the name of that place? The music place. Lincoln Center. That's what Lincoln Center is today. That's San Juan Hill. And majority of individual, as a matter of fact, San Juan Hill was still in existence when Harlem was coming into existence. Because remember, there would be no Harlem without Philip and Maggie Payton. Philip and Maggie Payton created the African American Realty Company. And they were the first individuals that two white Jew boys came to them to try to get two buildings filled on 134th Street. They couldn't get the buildings filled because nobody would move in the buildings. And at the time, the people that actually occupied Harlem at that time was Irish, Italians, Jews, and Irish, Italian, Jews.
Hold
No. Germans. Germans, a lot of Germans. Y'all know Bert Lancaster? Y'all ever heard of Bert Lancaster? He from Harlem.
He said it there.
That's right.
He said he was from home.
Al Pacino. Harlem.
Al Pacino, actor?
I just said Al Pacino. Harlem.
Gangster.
That's right.
The gangster.
Yeah, but see, most of the gangsters he paid, you know, most of the people that emulate the gangsters he played were the stupid ones. The stupidest gangster that ever was a gangster is Scarface. That is one stupid joker. Whoever watched the movie?
Yeah, I watched it a couple times.
What was, and you watched the movie, was he a smart guy?
No.
No.
He was a guy who killed his own partner for jealousy.
Yeah. His daughter, well, actually,
When you really know that he wasn't a gangster
Yes,
because he sniffed his own product.
yeah.
That's when you know he ain't a real gangster. Gangsters is about money, not about getting high.
Yeah, he got hard a lot of times in that movie, yeah.
If I wanted to be a gangster that Al Pacino would play, come on, man, you gotta be the Godfather.
Oh, Godfather, yeah.
Why? The Godfather was the best because he played a lot of gangsters, Donnie Briscoe, all of these fucking gangsters. But the best gangster he played was the one that when he didn't want to be a gangster. He was the one in the family that everybody said, oh, he ain't gonna be the gangster. He gonna be the nice one. And he was so much a gangster that when he wanted to get out, his famous line, well, they prying me back into the gang. But no, we go for the, listen, you can see the black guys with the Scarface fucking t-shirts. You know, Shaquille O'Neal got a freaking bigger than this whole kente cloth in his house, a Scarface. He don't even got Marcus Garvey, he don't got Martin Luther King, none of that.
No.
He got Scarface.
What? Yeah.
When they did the tour of his house, Big stupid house.
Well, the issue is that this is what I did. Years ago, I used to watch this movie, this sitcom called Cribs.
Yeah, right.
And they used to go to people's houses and see what they shit was about. I watched every black person in that freaking, not one. Well, I should not, let me stop. There was one. Out of all of them, not one person I ever seen on Cribs showed a library. Not one. Not one!
Or picture of Martin Luther King.
They showed you how many cars they had. They showed you how big the house was.
How many women
They showed you chinchilla bedspreads.
The jewelry problem.
The first guy that I seen, listen to this, the first guy that I seen with a library was a white boy that was a champion skateboarder. He had 2 cars. He had a refurbished Cadillac, or no, it was not a Cadillac, it was a T-Bird. And then he had a little jalopy. But he had a library with pristine. I was like, then my man said, do you read? He said, sure I read. Like he really. And then the only black guy that had a library was Grant Hill. You know, the basketball player? Shit, Grant Hill he got a library and art. His mother, professors and shit. Yeah, they don't play grades.
Exactly.
Grant Hill, serious is a heart attack. But when you look at most of these individuals, their emphasis is in materialism.
Right.
And if they call themselves giving back to the community, it's materialistic. They look at it in that context. The greatest thing you could give a person is unconditional love. That's the greatest shit you can give. Can't question it. It's 100%. And that shit is forever. But what we do is we want to go for the superficial shit, the surface shit. Because we know that that's what we are addicted to. We're addicted to materialism. We can't live without it. And you identify, it's about African or American, which really is dealing with your identity. Elijah Muhammad, he created an organization dealing, or should I say him and Wallace Farad Muhammad created an organization dealing with restoring your identity. Marcus Garvey created an organization restoring your identity. Noble Drew Ali created an organization restoring your identity. The object was, we didn't know who the hell we was. And we really needed to find out real fast.
Still doing?
Oh, right now. Real bad. The problem now is even worse than before, because at least before we just didn't know. Now we confused. Because it's so much gobbledygook out there, you don't know what to pick from. You know, like, as y'all know, I'm a pet peeve for getting it right. And a lot of these, the issue about the books is that if you read real books, they have a thing called references, you know, bibliographies, you know, indexations, footnotes. That means that you get to check this shit. And if you read a book and you ain't read the footnotes, and you ain't read the bibliography, or the indexation, or the introduction, or the preface, or the afternotes, you ain't read the frickin' book. I don't care who you are. The object is to be able to know that you are clear about the information that you are consuming. So the why this became such an essential piece was because she was so complete in her crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And when I read her sister book, I was amazed at her. And it was one of my students that introduced me to this book and said, "Trust, you need to check this out." And when I read, I was like, oh shit.
Show me the book.
African or American?
Right. Thank you.
African or American? Black Identity and Political Activism in New York City, 1784 to 1861. So what I'm gonna do right now is that I'm gonna get into some of this. And I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I'm gonna give you an idea on the quality of these societies that existed in Seneca during this particular period of time. Because we talked about San Juan Hill a little bit. We talked about Little Africa a little bit. We talked about, what do you call it? Well, we're going to talk about Seneca Village. We're going to talk about what is called Sandy Court, I think it is. Hold on, let me get it. Sandy Court. But what it represents is that it represents the early settlements in Staten Island. And they represent the beginning of moving up Manhattan into the northern part of the area. Harlem itself was actually named by the Dutch. And the real name of the city was not Harlem, it was New Harlem, after New Amsterdam, which actually was Dutch controlled before the English came. Because most of us think of, America through English eyes. But the first city in the United States was St. Augustine, Florida. And that's Spanish. So the Dutch, they created a major role in the slave trade. Because I want y'all to know that slavery wasn't introduced by countries at first, it was introduced by companies. Like the Dutch West Indian Company. It was probably one of the most powerful companies that existed. How many people know who Henry Hudson is? Who's Henry Hudson? The Hudson River. Well, Henry Hudson worked for the Dutch West Indian Company. That's what he worked for.
What's that highway?
A slaveholder. That's how he got here. Go look at the history of who the hell Henry Hudson is. You're going to scratch your head. You're going to be like, oh, shit.
Google search right now.
I'm telling you. It'll blow you away. But let me go on. I want to read some more of this on the Tenderloin. It says, it says that the Marshal was truly an expression of the Negro New Negro, as it created a space where blacks and whites could have intellectual conversations with one another. But this angered white New York. Complaints by a white committee were made about the mixing of races and interracial dating. In 1913, a letter from the mayor was sent to the police commissioner, and spies were sent to the marshal to try to find the owner, James L. Marshall, some illegal act. And that's always was the case. When something happened that was beneficial to the black community, the first thing they did was come and shut it down. That's the first thing they did. So remember, the Cotton Club was owned by black people first, but it wasn't called a Cotton Club. Anybody know who was the owner?
Ray Robinson.
No. Ray Robinson, that's many years later.
What was his name? Aldi Gooding?
No. What you might be thinking of is the guy that it was sold to.
Right.
His name is Bonnie Madden. Bonnie Madden was a gangster, a white gangster. But he tried to cash in on a major movement that was taking place in Harlem for survival. And that survival movement was called rent parties. Because people couldn't really afford to live. So what they was doing, they was creating rent parties every weekend in order to do it. The rent parties got to be so numerous that it had measured up to, listen to this, 2,000 rent parties every weekend. 2,000! So the white gangsters was like, hey, wait a minute, we got to get some of this money now. Wait a minute, like, what's going on here? So what Bonnie Madden decided to do was he was already selling bootleg liquor. And his position was if they buying liquor, if everybody's buying liquor, they're going to buy liquor from me. So instead of buying liquor, he said he didn't want to just sell them liquor. He wanted to get a whole piece of the action. So his position was set up a whole shop where they can come and they could participate or we could make money. And his first idea was, you know, we also want to let white people partake of this good time, you know, but they didn't have no outlet. So there was a guy who was a boxer who had owned this place called Club Deluxe. It was on 142nd Street. And the boxer's name was Jack Johnson. Right. And it was causing Jack a whole lot of problems because he couldn't make no money and he was boxing half the time, so he couldn't keep it up. So eventually he was losing more money than he was making. So he decided to sell it to Bonnie Madden dirt cheap. And that's what he did. And Bonnie's position was set the shit up. But they set it up. And let me tell you what Bonnie did. He said that he didn't want to compete with the rent parties because he knew they had music and everything. He said he knew he couldn't compete with that, but he had to find something that would be better than that. So he was looking around for a setup so that he knew people would come to the club. So he went and got the baddest musician in all of fucking New York. He went and got Duke Ellington. He hired Duke Ellington as the band for the Cotton Club. And Duke got all of the girls and all of the other individuals to come. The only problem is everybody had to come through the back door. Nobody could come through the front door. And they was making hand over fist loot. I mean, crazy hand over fist loot. And as you do know, for most of its major time, its money-making time during the era of the end of Prohibition and you know, the beginning of the bebop era, you know, that's when certain things began to loosen up. When 52nd Street and all of that became became the notorious area for music during that day. So when you think about Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and, you know, Miles and all of them, they actually got their heyday back in the 50s, you know, the 40s, during that particular time. But the major place was 52nd Street, and when we talk about the Tenderloin, that Marshall building, that's what we're talking about, that particular era. And this is why I say a lot of times, if we just only knew how powerful the people we come from, that, and the significant thing is, they was right around the corner and we didn't even know it. You know, right in the neighborhood and we didn't even know it. You know, so when you talk about the Tenderloin, or you talk about Weeksville, y'all know Weeksville, right? Yeah. Weeksville in Brooklyn.
Houses.
Well, see, yeah, but that's the only, them couple of houses is there. But you know how far Weeksville went? It went from Crown Heights all the way to Bed-Stuy. It was a big place. And remember, these were independent African enclaves. You know, Little Africa, independent. San Juan Hill, independent. You know, this is before Harlem, you know? And it set the stage for what eventually would come. Because my first introduction with it was through a gentleman by the name of Hubert Henry Harrison. I call him greater than Socrates. He's bad. They call him the Black Socrates, but he was a bad joke. He read 5 books a night. I'm not talking about a couple, I'm talking about real serious material. W.E.B. Du Bois said he was the greatest mind that he ever came in contact with. Hubert Henry Harrison, bad man.
5 books a night.
You hear what I just said? 5 books a night.
That's what I'm asking. That's a lot of books.
You know what he was? He was an autodidact. Anybody? I ain't gonna ask Malachi. Everybody in here know what an autodidact is.
Self-taught.
You taught me on your Friday class.
Self-taught.
Correct.
Auto means self.
right.
That's correct. Autodidact, taught by self. In this case, during that time, there were a lot of autodidacts because we were not allowed to be taught in a regular institution. So there were certain individuals that were brilliant, like Hubert Harrison. This guy was so smart that he was the guy that started soapbox speaking in Harlem. You know, where you get on the ladder on the soapbox and stay there and talk. Well, he didn't start it in Harlem. He started at the sub-treasury down at J.P. Morgan. You know J.P. Morgan? Right underneath his window. And one day he galvanized 11,000 people right downstairs underneath his window. They had to rope off the area. So I went to the Schomburg to look up the Riester because, you know, Malachi knew back then we used to have, the Schomburg have them, what's the name machines you go in there and they have the microfilm.
Right.
And bro, you could go dizzy, you know, with that. But I was looking for an article from 1921 about this article about Hubert Henry Harrison, you know, speaking down in the sub-treasury and galvanized 11,000 people. So I find the article. So I'm going through it and I go past the article and go to the next page and find out there's an article on the next page called Garvey Must Go. And I was like, who the fuck is this? So I look at the article and I start reading it, and the article is about A. Philip Randolph and Chandler Owens are on stepladders on 134th Street on the corner calling Marcus Garvey a charlatan. And they standing there, you know, talking all of this shit, this, that, and the other. And the Marcus Garvey UNI members are across the street. And what had happened was they kept running off at the mouth, and one of the Garveyites goes over to Chandler Owens and say, you better shut up and keep Mr. Garvey's name out your mouth. You know, you better shut your mouth like that. So Chandler Owens ain't saying nothing. No, Chandler Owens kept on talking, and A. Philip Randolph and said, we don't care what Garvey said, we're gonna keep talking. So they kept on talking. Then eventually they took their a podium down and they was getting ready to back because they had a office that they called, that they had in that area, 134th Street. Because see, right now today in Harlem's what they call African Square is 125th Street. But back in the Renaissance, it was 134th Street. Where you see the Schomburg, that's where the action was. So you would see Paul Robeson and A. Philip Randolph. You would see Marcus Garvey. You would see people like Benjamin Quarles, Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Charles Johnson. All these people, they was the movers and shakers of that day. And that was the corner of the intellectuals where the individuals, you know, got off their wares, put it like that. And during that particular time, what really became an asset was that the majority of Harlemites knew that if you wanted to find out something, you go to 134th Street and stand and listen. Now y'all think that I'm saying this because of that? Well, it's not true. If you read the New York Times, they would tell you about how many people from Columbia University, you know, the professors from Columbia University used to come down to Harlem and sit on the curb and listen to Hubert Harrison and them give lectures on the corner. I'm talking about the professors from the university. Harrison was the first person that ever got his picture on a science magazine in Germany. In Germany. And he never went to no school for science. It's a brilliant brother. The only problem is we know very, very little about him. As a matter of fact, a lot of his accomplishments are given to other people. Like you know, the tricolor flag, red, black, and green. That actually comes from Hubert Harrison's flag for his organization, the Liberty League. That, because remember, y'all don't know this, but it's Hubert Harrison that introduced Marcus Garvey to the Harlem community. Hubert Harrison. And his flag was black, brown, and yellow. And they asked him, why black, brown, and rugby? He goes, they're the shades of black people. They asked Marcus, you asked Marcus Garvey where he got his flag from. Most people don't even know. Robert Hill wrote the most on Marcus Garvey, only second to Tony Martin. I knew both of them. And Tony Martin come out of Wesleyan College. He was the brother that wrote the book, The Onslaught, and he was the individual that got in trouble with white people. Well, not with that, because of secret relationships between blacks and Jews. Malachi tell you that. They was fighting like cats and dogs in the academy. You know. Because a white woman by the name of Mary Lefkowitz decided to critique an article, and because the article was called Stolen Legacy, and she wrote a rebuttal called Not Stolen Legacy. And it got to be a back and forth. And eventually they had a debate. And WBAI put it on.
That was with Latrice.
And Latrice Lee was the moderator. Bro, it was like bringing a freaking steak wrapped around your neck in a lion's den. You just got ate the hell up.
And Dr. Clark was the lecturer.
No, you had Dr. Clark, and then you had Brunell, Martin Brunell on one side, and then on the other side you had Jeffrey, you had Mary Lefkowitz and Jeffrey, oh God, what was his name? Jeffrey something or other. But anyway, she was a Greek, professor, and he was a Syriologist. And
So you know, Greece too, and Latrice Lee had to check him because he had.
well, what had happened was he had made a statement in regard to a text, and Latrice checked him by asking him what was his erudition in that particular area of study. And he said, she asked him, did he speak Greek? And he said, of course. So his position was, I'm gonna check this black girl. She thinks she's some tough shit. She said, excuse me, by the way, do you speak Greek? And she said, oh, yes, of course. And Latin and Spanish. And she just started going down the list. I was like, homeboy, you need to back the hell up right about now. Because your ass getting about to get chewed the hell out. You know what I mean? And then she started literally, intellectually bringing him down peg by peg by peg. And when the shit was over, he was just sitting there like this. Ate the hell up. But the thing again is that in that debate, it dealt with issues that we are talking about. You know, issues that are put into the mainstream society, given a certain amount of elitism, and people take it as verbatim, that it's real and that it's 100% true, and a lot of it is not. You know. Like, they showed a picture just last week. Did y'all see that picture that they had of Donald Trump showing himself as Jesus? What did y'all think about that? No, seriously, what do you think about it? Malachi, what do you think about that?
That's AI.
You said it's AI. Yeah, but whether it's AI, the issue is who did it. The issue is, regardless who did, whether it's AI, the issue is it's done. And somebody was behind doing it. I'm asking you, what do you think about it?
It's typical cracker shit where devils try to project the image out for the masses to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that Donald Trump got a major ego.
Well, you know, his ego ain't, his ego is way major than that. The issue is, but he just don't got the smarts to do that shit. But the reason I'm asking the question is because is because it's not new.
That's right.
Let me just say that again. It's not new. I can show you a picture where they did the exact same thing with George Washington. I can show you some pictures where they did some of this shit with Abraham Lincoln. The problem is that because we don't really do a lot of reading, we assume that things are the first. You know, like this just happened. And this is the first time this has ever been done. You know, I mean, who you think the first black president was?
Henderson, something, what's his first name? Henderson, something
No,
Henderson,
the
right?
first black president was Bill Clinton. Stop it.
Bill Clinton?
Y'all don't know that?
Bill Clinton?
Yeah. No, he think John Hanson. That's really not true. And nobody really. I mean, if nothing, that's probably the biggest bogus one they really got. That John Hanson was the president. I mean, that is, you know, and mind you, because I did a little research in that area, one of the significance of that represents some important issue, and that is, all you had to do was Google this damn shit. Just Google it, and it would have gave you the right answer. You know, some stuff, before, when I was first studying history and material, you had to do the legwork. That means you got to go to a library, like I said, see microfilm, you got to really do the work. He'll tell you, being a journalist, to do the legwork, listen, y'all see the nice article written and all of that, you know, and everything. You don't know how much time it takes to put that shit together. Not even a little bit. A couple of paragraphs. That's real research. Time consuming. People don't realize it. If you had an idea, just a little idea, what it took, and then individuals go out and they make the claim like it's really, really legitimate. Like, first of all, the common sense would be, what bunch of white guys that left Europe escaping religious and monarchical persecution coming here, these white guys now, slavery in full effect, and they're gonna make a black guy president. Do that sound logical? Do that sound like that could happen?
He was lucky to become senator.
Well, he did become senator, and that's one thing, but not here, not in America. He became senator of Bassa County, Liberia. And that's when he repatriated back to Liberia. His name was John Hanson, and there was a white John Hanson too. Both individuals were from Liberia. I mean, both individuals were from Maryland. But what happened was the white John Hanson, he was born in 1715, and he died in 1783. 1783. The black John Hanson wasn't born until 1791. They say that the black guy signed the Articles of Confederation, and he wasn't even born yet. That's because they didn't even go and check. She'll tell you, know who the first person I heard say that? Dick Gregory. At the slave, Dick Gregory, she'll tell you. And didn't go check. This basic shit. The first thing in history is time and geography. Time and geography. Einstein was so serious about time and geography, he literally created a new term called space-time. That's because there's no place without a time. No place in the world without a time. And no time without a place. Space-time. But what happens is that we don't understand the mechanics of research and study. So we can go for the okie doke real easy. That's why I said, if I said to you, who were the black Jews, and you say you was black, I know you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You can't use a geography to determine something only. That's not how it works. It's like saying that in Africa it was only black people. Not if you know genetics, not if you know anthropology, not if you know science. And then you can't keep assuming that if you don't go do the research that you actually know. I asked a brother, I said, light travels at 186,000 miles per second. 186,000 miles per second. Anybody in here know what light is made of?
Photons. Photons.
This man knows what he's talking about.
And it goes around the earth 7 times in 1 tick of the clock.
Say that again?
It goes around the earth 7 times in 1 tick of the clock to give you some reference how fast it is.
What?
Speed of light, 186,000 miles.
Oh, the speed of light, yeah. Well, the speed of light is fast, but it ain't that fast. The speed of light is fast, but it ain't that fast. Did you know it's something faster than the speed of light?
Yeah.
What?
Thought.
No. You're talking about something that's not measured at that level yet. But anyway, I'm talking about what's measurement in regard to being able to be measured. So if we talk about light and it travels at 186,000 miles per second, that means in a year, in 1 year, how fast does light travel? 1 year. That's what they call a light year. A light travels in 1 year 5,879,000,000,000 miles. Actually 6 trillion miles in 1 year. That's how far light travels in 1 year. 6 trillion miles. But check this out. In order to get across our galaxy, it takes 100,000 light years.
Very fast.
That means that you would have to take 100,000 times 6 trillion to get across that bitch. And mind you, that's a small one, because the closest galaxy to us is Andromeda. That's 220,000 light years across. Yes, sir.
Well, the closest star to us, Alpha Centauri.
Say that again?
Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, but that's a little star. So that's a baby.
They say to travel to that star would take you 5 years.
5 years.
5 years if you're going at the speed of light.
Yeah, but shit, there's no mass that goes the speed of light. That's impossible.
I know.
Right. The issue is that there's a thing called a tachyon.
Or what?
A tachyon. A tachyon is the opposite of what a photon is. In other words, a photon gets to the speed. The only reason you get to see light is because a photon literally gets to that speed. Before it gets to that speed or after, you'll never see it. In other words, a photon doesn't exist. In science, it does not exist. In order for you to see it, that's when it becomes light. That's how fast it's moving. But the reason that it ain't that fast is because if light travels at 186,000 miles per second, everywhere it goes, by the time it gets there, darkness is already there. Darkness is already there. What that means is, in this universe, the 4 basic fundamental ingredients of the universe is hydrogen, helium, oxygen, and carbon. Hydrogen, helium, oxygen, and carbon. And most of that shit you see, a lot of it is carbon. It's like this, what you breathing now. If I ask you, what are you breathing, what would you say?
Oxygen.
Carbon monoxide.
Say that again?
Carbon monoxide.
No, he said carbon dioxide, no. No, not that. But actually, you're not. The issue is that most of the oxygen that you're breathing is 78% nitrogen. That means only 20% of the oxygen that you breathe is oxygen. 78% of it is nitrogen. So you ask, why did they not call it nitrogen? The reason that is because the body doesn't consume nitrogen, it consumes oxygen. So it consumes all of that which is necessary or provided that it needs for the oxygen, and the nitrogen is here nor there. See, the issue is, and mind you, let me just say this, I'm just repeating things based on my research in certain areas, that's all. You know, I ain't no scientist, my thing is giving you the enthusiasm, the thirst to go out and do it for yourself, so that you become your own teacher. You become who you really are. I can tell you really who you are real fast. What I want you to do is I want you to tell me right now, tell me who you are. Tell me who you are, but don't tell me your name. I don't want to know your family. Don't tell me what school you went to, what your profession is. Don't tell me your job. Don't tell me who you sleep with, your gender, none of that. Now, tell me who you are. Because all of the things I named ain't nothing but labels. The real essence of who you are is inside out, not outside in. All of the things I named are outside in. Most of us never investigated inside out. So if I ask you really who you are, can you really give me a full, complete, clear description of who you are without using those titles?
Yeah, I got one for you.
Go ahead.
You're a corporean.
A what?
Corporean, you made up of copper. Corporal. Not copper, corporal. That's a corporean. That's all physical structures.
Copper.
No, corporal.
Spell it C-C-O-R-P.
Yeah, corporean.
C-O-R-P.
But let me ask you a question. Do you think that is all what a person is?
Well, a person basically is spiritually made up of spirit.
Yeah, but what is the spirit made of?
Yeah, it's made of photons, neutrons.
No, I wouldn't say that. Spirits are made up of the memories of our ancestors. That's it. And once you tap into them memories, that's the energy, bro. Believe me. It's the electrical input. The problem is that we don't tap in. And when I say the energy of our ancestors, I'm not just talking about physical beings. I'm talking about the energy of this whole universe. Remember, we just talked about photons and tachyons, and we talked about all of that.
I understand what you mean.
Right. And it's like Einstein said that if he believed in God, he would believe in what's this guy's name? Why can't you remember? He's a scientist too.
Degrassi.
No.
Tesla.
No, he's a scientist that Spinoza, right? Excuse me. Thanks, True. That's my brother, True son. That's right. Spinoza. He would believe in the Spinoza's concept of God, and Spinoza's concept of God was based on the universe is God, which is basically what everybody that really understands the nature of what is and how is understands what that means in regard to the whole universe. So when we talk about, like you were saying about light traveling at 186,000 miles per second, but did you know that the universe expands faster than that light can travel? That means the universe is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's doing it faster than 186,000 miles per second.
And they're saying what you see now, it was already in the past, thousands of years ago.
Yeah, but there's no such a thing. And the reason that is, it's the same thing what Einstein said. Einstein said there is no time. There is only the present. If there is the past and if there's the future, he said we would have to call it the present past, because it's the present that's defining it. He said if it's the future, it would have to be called the present future, because it's the present that's defining the future. He said the reality of it is that we base it on the concepts that have been established before it. So if I asked you, it's like saying about gravity. Isaac Newton had a concept of gravity. And then Einstein has a concept of gravity. They are not the same.
Right.
You know, the problem is that most people in the world today, they still think that the world is run by Isaac Newton's definition of gravity. So if I asked you, I said, what's gravity? What would you tell me? Okay, you think it. If I asked you what is gravity, what would you tell me?
Gravity,
Still thinking. Gravity, what do you think?
my baby mama.
That's
Yeah, beat that one.
gravity. Go ahead, bro.
Gravity is protecting energy.
Say that again.
Protection power. What is protection power? You take a string, you put something on the end of that string, and you swing it around. So when it gets slow, the thing falls down. Faster you swing, and that's what gravity really is.
No. Anybody else?
What is gravity first? You have to define what's gravity, right?
Right. Well, I was talking about the very nature of the two different concepts of gravity. In this case, Isaac Newton's gravity and then Einstein's gravity. Isaac Newton's gravity was based on a force. That's what he taught, what you just identified and what you showed as an example. He identified, that's why his was based on an apple, you know, falling in regard to what he believed to be gravity. But what Einstein said, that is not gravity. Gravity is based on what is called the curvature of space-time. That's what it's called. Now, which means just the opposite. It's like saying if I had a sheet, right? This sheet, right? Like for instance, here, this is good. I have this, hold this, right? I have this. This sheet here is being identified as space, outer space. You know, all of that opposite space that you are seeing. And if I took a ball, a golf ball, and put it in the middle of this, what would happen?
It would fall.
It what?
It would fall.
It would fold. No, it wouldn't fold. I would have it at the end, but it would dip. Right, and it would curve. Right. That means that all of this flat area that it would sink in. And if I took a ball, a marble, and rolled it, it would go all around like this. Like you would have in a drain going down the street. It would look just like that. That's called curvature of space-time. So right now, if you go Google, you know, gravity, it's going to give you two definitions. But it's going to give it to you based on chronological time. When Isaac gave his definition, and then when Einstein gave his. But most scientists today, most of them deal with Einstein's, even though they use both in context. But the very definition is the curvature of space-time is what gravity is how they define it in retrospect. Now, mind you, we're talking about the scientists. This is how the scientist is looking at it versus how we might be seeing. Yes, go ahead.
But it's very strange, and still, a lot of people still think that the earth is flat. Even though it's been told, and you still have a lot of people today say, no, the earth is flat.
Yeah, but listen to this.
But it is.
Science don't care what you think. It is or it ain't. We ain't got time to be arguing with you whether you think it is or whether you... Come on, it don't make sense. You know, I have people today that still think that that no man never landed on the moon. They say it's a fake. God just told me, he said, no, they didn't go around the moon just now. It didn't happen. Now, I'm just saying is that, look, I ain't mad at you. If that's what you want to believe, if that's, you know, you still at that stage in your life where everything is that skeptical to you, that you can't take reality and deal with it, I ain't mad at you. But to think that everybody else gonna go along with that, especially in the day, modern day of, you know, science and insight, it don't make sense. You know what I'm saying? But either way, let me go. Chapter 7, the story of Seneca Village, 1825 to 1857. On a brisk autumn day in 1871, workers made a shocking discovery while plowing up the ground in New York City's newly established Central Park. As they labored to unroot trees from the 85th Street entrance, landscapers uncovered two coffins. One enclosed the body of a black man, according to an article in the New York Herald. The unearthing of this burial ground was a mystery because no one remembered the existence of a cemetery in that area. Apparently, less than 15 years after the residents of Seneca Village were driven off their land, their story had already been forgotten by most New Yorkers. Indeed, even in the light of this burial site, no mention was made of the thriving community whose ruins and cemeteries lay beneath the hallowed land, and most New Yorkers never realized that the creation of Central Park had robbed an entire community of its homes, churches, and burial grounds. Reflecting the silence surrounding the history of black folks, the story of Seneca Village was effectively erased from the memory of New York City. Dismissed as a shanty town or ignored entirely, Seneca Village nearly disappeared from New York City's history. Though generally forgotten, Seneca Village was a crucial symbol to the black community during the antebellum era. To these newly emancipated New Yorkers, Seneca Village reflected their commitment to building institutions in the United States, the attainment of political power, and all their hopes for the future. For black New Yorkers, Seneca Village was more than a thriving neighborhood. It was a symbol of success their people could achieve and their potential destiny in the United States. What that is saying is that this was the incubator that was put together for black people to have an independent space where that they could be who they was as a people.
Black Wall Street.
Very well, you know, the difference with Black Wall Street was, remember, the timing was a little different. We talking now just 15, 20 years later. You know, because we talking about Black Wall Street 1921. I mean, yeah, 1921. 1921, and I said 100 years later, excuse me. So we're talking about quite different period of time. It says, beginning in 1825, residents labored for over 30 years to construct homes, gardens, churches, schools, and cemeteries in an effort to create a future for their children and to honor their ancestors. However, the success of Seneca Village could not remain a secret forever, and at least a few white New Yorkers became disturbed and threatened by notions of a strong, autonomous black community. Consistent with the white backlash during the 1850s, politicians commenced an attack against Seneca Village that ultimately decimated a community and the dreams of its residents. This chapter is the story of Seneca Village, the black people who made it a home and the movement to destroy it and culminate in the creation of Central Park. The tale of Seneca Village begins rather modestly, with a few small plots of land and a group of determined black activists. Prior to the Civil War, most New York City residents lived below 42nd Street in the expanding yet overcrowded urban milieu. The territory stretching north of the city was still mostly rural and unpopulated. Loyalists had owned much of that region prior to the Revolutionary War, but abandoned the land following British withdrawal. In the early national era, the few men who owned these large tracts of land used them primarily for agricultural purposes. However, in 1825, landowner John Whitehead made a crucial decision that created a new possibility for Black New Yorkers. Whitehead had owned property between 85th and 88th Street near 7th Avenue. Choose to partial off it land and sell individual plots to interested buyers. Perhaps to Whitehead's surprise, an unexpected group of people began to purchase his estate, attracted by inexpensive land and the opportunity to create a community. Black New Yorkers began to invest in Upper Manhattan Island. Andrew Williams and Epiphany Davis, let me say that again, Andrew Williams and Epiphany Davis purchased the first plots from the Whiteheads in September of 1825. Williams selected 3 lots on September 27th, but for which he paid, listen to this, $125. And on the same day, Davis purchased 12 lots for $578. Shortly thereafter, the African American Methodist Episcopal Zion congregation, the church, chose 6 adjoining tracts. From this initial activity, the community of Seneca Village was born. It was no coincidence that Andrew Williams, Epiphany Davis, and the AME Zion Church purchased their land simultaneously. It seems that there was a united effort to secure this land, which reflected a strong coalition within the Black community and its desire to create a space for its members. Black communities in New York had traditionally centered around churches, and as Black people flocked northward, Seneca Village would be no exception. Because Williams and Davis were members of Zion Church, their actions were likely a concerted effort. However, the commitment to create Seneca Village was not strictly a religious movement. Since the dawn of emancipation, Black New Yorkers had worked within institutions such as the African Society. Y'all write that down. African Society was one of the first major organizations that existed for Black people in New York City. The African Society had evinced a strong interest in purchasing land since 1820, and its members were clearly continuing the traditional emphasis upon accumulating real estate to inspire the creation of a strong Black neighborhood. As a result, the real estate ventures of the society did not end in Lower Manhattan. African Society members, followed by an array of Black New Yorkers, slowly migrated northward to establish the community of Seneca Village. In less than 15 years, as residents constructed homes, gardens, and barns, Seneca Village expanded considerably. The 1838 map of the community indicates a variety of property owners, ranging from those who own several plots with grand homes to those who inhabited a single plot with a small cottage. For example, African Society member Epiphany Davis owned 17 plots. That sister was getting busy. 17?
So how big was the plot?
Well, I would say considerably.
An acre?
I don't think it was a full acre. But one thing that I can say is that it wasn't, and you got to remember this, it wasn't, as we look at plots and land during that time, it could have been that, it could have been as big as that, but I don't think it was because it was black people. You know what I'm saying? Because during the Homestead Act, they was giving white people land, you know, hook, line, and sinker, and really wasn't making it a concerted effort to mark it off because it was just so much land available. But at this time, their position was, remember, we giving niggas land, so we can't be giving them all the land, you know, kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure that the white boys was probably very, very conservative in their approach when they dealt with giving black people opportunity to buy land. But let me go on. It says that the 1838 map of the community indicates that a variety of property owners ranging from those who own several plots and grand homes to those who inhabited single plots. It says, for example, African Society member Epiphany Davis owned 17 plots of land and constructed 2 3-story homes on his property. Wait a minute. Shit, that guy must, it sounds like it must that she was a he. It says that on his property that must have been the envy of the community. Likewise, George Root controlled 9 plots upon which he constructed several buildings, in addition to a barn, stable, and a shed. Root built a 2-story pizza that stretched the entire length of one track. Andrew Williams only owned 3 plots, but he erected 2 buildings that were over 2 stories high. Despite these impressive displays, there were many properties that stood empty or only contained a small building city official described as a shack. William Pease was one such landowner. He purchased a single plot, but was unable to afford the construction of an impressive building. Black female property owners Sarah and Cordelia Reed were in similar circumstances. They probably waited impatiently for the day when they would be able to build on their land and permanently inhabit the burgeoning community of Seneca Village. William Pease and the Reeds represented a portion of the black population who longed to be property owners and struggled against poverty. This story reflected the diversity within New York City's black community and the burning desire to create a unified black neighborhood regardless of economic status. Although Seneca Village population was steadily growing among black New Yorkers, it is difficult to determine exactly how many people lived in the community. According to the 1855 census, there were 264 people living there. However, it is likely that the number was much higher. Many known Seneca Village landowners do not appear in the 1855 census, despite the fact that they were constructed homes and likely lived on their land. In addition, official reports indicated that there were over 300 homes in Seneca Village. That's a lot of homes. That's a lot of homes. 300? It says that, and that was 300 homes in Seneca Village by 1857. And given the preponderance of large families in the antebellum era, it seems unlikely that there would be 300 homes and only 264 residents. Further complicating the situation is the strong probability that Seneca Village was used as a haven for fugitive slaves during the antebellum era. Are y'all familiar with the transatlantic slave trade? Everybody familiar with the transatlantic slave trade? Everybody? Right. Well, there's no such a thing.
Yes.
Because the Atlantic Ocean never enslaved anybody.
Europeans.
It's called the European slave trade, not the transatlantic. See, on the other side of the continent, they call that the Arab slave trade. They don't call it the Indian Ocean slave trade.
They're doing that to take the blame over them.
Of course, that's the idea. So I want everybody to realize that on the west coast of Africa, you had the European slave trade. On the east coast of Africa, we had the Arab slave trade. One lasted for 14 centuries, and one lasted for 4 centuries. Think about that. On the west coast, slavery lasted for 4 centuries. On the east coast, slavery still exists right now.
Ain't nobody saying nothing.
Hey, I'm just giving you the facts. Y'all deal with the rest of it.
Nobody saying nothing.
You know what I mean? It said, regardless of the actual numbers of residents, Seneca Village blossomed into a flourishing community during the 1850s. The neighborhood stretched from 81st Street to 89th Street. Let me say that again. From 81st Street to 89th Street, between 7th and 8th Avenues. And in the upper region, there was extensive farmland and barns, stables, and several two-story homes. The property owned by longtime residents such as Andrew Williams, Epiphany Davis, and George Root continued to prosper along with Henry Garnett, no apparent relation to activist Henry Highland Garnett, who owned 2 adjacent plots of land containing a barn and a stable, 2 sheds, and 2 horses. One of his homes was particularly impressive and towered 3 stories high with a basement and a porch, reflecting their desire to establish an independent, self-sustaining community. Many residents cultivated gardens to provide food for themselves and fellow community members, according to the newspaper reports. Seneca Village contained numerous homes of various degrees of excellence. A number of these have fine kitchen gardens, and some of these side hill slopes are adorned with cabbage and melon patches, with hills of corn and cucumbers and beds of beets and parsnips and other garden delicacies. Most striking, however, was the increasing number of affluent black New Yorkers. You know, the elite boys. It says that who invested in Seneca Village. George Webster and Charles Sylvan, a Haitian immigrant, both owned property worth over $2,000, and O.P. McCullen and William Matthews controlled plots valued at $1,000. The fact that property values often exceeded the necessary amount of qualified for voting rights reinforced the image of Seneca Village as a community where black folks were beginning to thrive despite the legacy of slavery. And the reason that was because of ownership of property. Ownership of property was more important than just plain emancipation. Because you could be free and still be a slave. But if you was free and had property, then you had opportunities that the average white person didn't have.
That's right.
That made me mad.
That made them upset. And then think about this, when you galvanize enough black people together that are property owners and also understand their own value, think of what threat that is to the powers that be. So this whole commission to create Central Park was right up their alley.
To tear down all that
That's right, to make sure we could get rid of this.
and not progress more.
Well, it was, remember, this was making a stillborn situation before it got to be a Rosewood or before it got to be, a Greenwood. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm talking about. Because they waited before it got that volatile before they decided to go and tear it down. In this case, their position is we ain't gonna let it get that deep. We're gonna get it before that. And the access to Central Park was one of the excuses, that they could go in there and confiscate these people's land. And I'm pretty sure the Africans was like, hey, wait a minute. What Leslie also talks about is the role that the early community played in activism. Because as a property owner, that means that you had rights that other people that didn't have property did. So when you galvanize those forces together in a political context, that means you was a force to be reckoned with.
Is that why they're having so much problems with Brooklyn now, with deed theft? Because that's really rampant.
With what?
That's throughout America.
With what?
Deed theft.
They're still
Oh, deed theft.
Stealing.
Yeah, but that's been going on for years.
It takes the rug from beneath people's wealth.
Yeah, well that too, but the thing is that, most of it's being done to older individuals, people that don't understand, No, white
that
folks.
goes back to the Klan. That's a long time.
No, I'm saying is that, land theft has been since human beings been on earth. The issue is that now you have a concerted effort going after particular groups because of vulnerability. In other words, the older you get, the more senile people think you are. So what they believe is that you're ripe for the picking in regard to this. And a lot of times, the elder individual, if you literally nudge them enough, they'll respond. You see?
No, what she's saying is there is literally a group of judges that went together and established a real estate along Eastern Parkway that black and brown people,
Small hats.
once they have reached over the age of 65 and they're retired and they have paid off their mortgage, they literally are coming through sunroofs, switching the locks, pay a bill for 2 months, call the police and say, well, why would I pay the bill on this property? But she's talking about the lady in 212.
I'm just talking about deed theft.
Right, yeah,
So
but that's what's going on. And the judges that are judging the cases are the children of the judges that form the real estate. And
Okay.
it's black and brown people they attack.
All right,
It
I'm
reminds me of your Seneca village. They were taking those people, undermining those people of those beautiful
The
homes in
Amsterdam,
the community.
Right, well, again, it's like anything. If you see something that somebody got something better than you and you think you should have it,
Exactly.
it's just basic,
Yeah.
But, we're going to end here because, I got a train to catch. But what I was just getting ready to say is that what this establishes for us is to show that our ability to challenge and to deal with the powers that be, no matter what the situation was always there. We were always fighting for our freedom, our justice, for our ability to have our own independence in this society. The problem is that sometimes we lost the source. That means we really lost the history of what those particular events were and how much they meant to us. So when you read these stories, this is just to give you, to wet your whistle. You can go online. This book is still available. This particular book was originally done by University of Illinois Press. It was originally done in 2008, so it's available. As I said, she is the sister of Michelle Alexander, And if you don't have that book, you need to get that one too. That's the new Jim Crow. And then second is that start reading about some of those early settlements. You can go start reading about San Juan Hill. You can go start reading about Little Africa. You can start reading about the Tenderloin section. You can go read, again here, Seneca Village. You know, there's a variety of these early settlements that you want to affiliate and avail yourself to give you a better understanding on how we got to be who we are here in New York, what was behind that, as if though we started, you know, fighting in the 60s. That's just not how it worked. You know, we think that the first time that we started, fighting for justice was when they started writing about it. No, that's not how that worked.
Our history.
We was fighting from the first time we met these jokers.
That's right.
I mean, the first time we met them, we was fighting.
None in there.
Right. So, what I, will say is that the material is out there. There's enough of our community who have did the legwork, and we got some brilliant, I'm talking about brilliant scholars in every particular walk of life. All you have to do is avail yourself. There's enough material out there. The sad thing now is that this freaking gizmo here is taking up all of the problem. That means people are doing less reading and they are viewing shit that is not legit. That means that they're going on the internet and they're viewing material that somebody put together that's bullshit. And they don't know how to read it as bullshit. So they assume that it's legitimate. And what happens is there's a process that is used called cut, paste, and post. Cut, paste, and post. No checking, just cut, paste, and post. It sounds good, so let's send it. That's how we deal with information.
So, well, some of the stuff on YouTube is not
A whole bunch of it is bullshit. You know, the issue is you have to really go check it. And, there's a lot of material that we have to double check. And I don't care who the person is. One of the things I loved about Professor Simmons was that his position was, if Dr. Ben said or if Dr. Clark said, go check it. He said if Dr. Ben said or Dr. Clark said, go check it.
So it doesn't matter who said it, just check it for yourself.
That's correct. If Jesus said it, go check it. Can anybody name something Jesus said?
I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe it.
Go ahead.
Well, according to my Hebrew, one of the teachers, the letter J did not even exist.
Forget all of the J stuff. Forget all of that. I don't even go with that. The issue is, can anybody quote to me anything that Jesus said?
Better than that, can anybody prove where he's buried at?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Or where he was born.
Well,
Or where he was born.
Yeah, there's no such. Yeah. But the issue is that, remember.
There's no physical evidence that he existed.
Huh?
No physical evidence that Jesus Christ ever existed.
That's correct. Not as a human
Not only
being.
him, but the other people in the Bible, the other Mary, Luke, and all those. That's all.
Well, some individuals. Well, let me just say this. Be careful. Don't put everything in one basket. The Bible has a variety of different source material. There's material in it that's real. That's history. The Roman government was real.
Okay, I'm sure about it. Yeah.
Pontius Pilate was a real governor.
Okay.
Herod really lived. But when we talk about Jesus the Christ, we don't have evidence for that. There's certain information we don't. Abraham, there's no information about Moses.
Mary,
Right,
that's all.
right. But most of the material when you deal with the Old Testament is speculative. But when you deal with the New Testament, there are events and places that did exist where a lot of the material also did not. So you know, you want to be careful because you have to realize, based on your own research and study, what you can verify and what you can't. And a lot of us, we go along with what we believe, not what we know or what we have evidence for.
I always question time and place.
Yeah.
That's always question time and place. Person's name, time and place.
Yeah,
right?
but the issue is that you gotta assume that the material you got from is the source. Yeah. But here's a good example. Like she was saying about the J. Let me ask her a question. If the J didn't exist, what was the name? Now, let me just say this. There's a variety of kinds of Hebrew. The oldest form of Hebrew is called Paleo-Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew, which is archaic Hebrew. You know why they call it Paleo-Hebrew? Because it's close to ancient Egyptian. Why? Because Paleo-Hebrew is a language that's not written with vowels. There's no vowels in it. What other language you know, Dr. Lewis, that is written with no vowels? What other language beyond Hebrew that is written with no vowels?
Japanese.
No.
Chinese.
No. Ancient Egyptian. Egyptian language has no vowels. So the issue here is that why do you think ancient Hebrew don't have vowels? It's because when did they become a nation? When did Israel or the Hebrews become a nation? When did they become a nation? Do y'all know the story? No. You know, Abraham, he left Chaldean Ur, went to Haran, left Haran, went to Canaan, left Canaan, went to Egypt. How did they get to Egypt? Jacob and his what? 11 sons. Where you get the 12 tribes of Egypt? That's the sons. Yeah, we got to move.
Paul, those books that you mentioned, it'd be good to have a list of those. Can somebody make a list, like
Don't worry, Trust will be back.
compile a list?
Yeah,
It'd be nice to compile a
What
list.
you do is, thank you everybody.
If anybody wants to log on to the African Echo Study Group, we want to give Trust a great big hand. You got to give it to the train. If anybody wants to log on to the African Echo Study Group, Brother True and the gang, we'll put their information in the chat. We want to thank everybody. Hold up. Dr. Lewis, give Trust a great big hand. He's going to be back in a little while. Dr. Lewis will be our next speaker on Straits of Hormuz and what's going on. So give Trust a great big hand. I'm going to leave it on. We're going to start cleaning up. And he'll be back in a couple of more weeks. Thank you, Zoom audience, and thank you people for coming out.
That flood, I don't think that ever existed. Huh? The flood.
No.
Or did?
No.
Okay, no. Yeah, there was floods in some parts of the world, but not like the whole planet was flooded.
Not the whole world.
That's crazy, huh?
People don't believe what they believe, you know that.
That's about Jesus Christ. That's a bunch of nonsense. Jesus Christ come back to save us. That's a bunch of nonsense. Because one thing, next day, they not come back to save us. But you know something, though? I was watching something, the nation, I know you guys know, the nation is a man about the mothership.
Yeah.
And the wheel. What do you think about that? I think there's some truth to know.
No.
Really? Oh, I wanted to come here earlier, but I was working.
Okay, Blue, thank you.
You had two books on the truth, right? You had two books on the truth, right?
Come here early.
I can't get it now, right? If you made a list, that'd be nice. You could do that? Alright, let's see, okay. I gotta go, alright. Interesting talking.
Okay, now.